To troubleshoot Authorized Net SOAP API, start by understanding the basics of the API and its requirements. The Authorized Net SOAP API is a payment gateway that allows merchants to process transactions securely. First, ensure you have the correct API credentials, including the API login ID and transaction key. These credentials are used to authenticate your API requests. Next, verify that your server meets the system requirements for the API, including the correct version of SSL and a compatible programming language. If you are experiencing issues with transactions, review the transaction response codes and messages. The Authorized Net API returns specific response codes and messages for each transaction. For example, a response code of 1 indicates a successful transaction, while a response code of 2 indicates a declined transaction. Use the Authorized Net API documentation to look up the meaning of each response code and message. Additionally, check the API logs for any error messages or warnings. The API logs can provide valuable information about what went wrong with a transaction. If you are still having trouble, troubleshoot the issue by testing the API in a sandbox environment. The sandbox environment allows you to test the API without actually processing live transactions. Test different scenarios and input values to identify the cause of the issue. Best practices for troubleshooting the Authorized Net SOAP API include reading the API documentation carefully and testing the API thoroughly before going live. It is also a good idea to implement error handling and logging in your application to help diagnose issues. By following these steps and best practices, you can effectively troubleshoot issues with the Authorized Net SOAP API and ensure secure and reliable payment processing. Remember to always refer to the official Authorized Net API documentation for the most up-to-date information and guidance. Troubleshooting the Authorized Net SOAP API requires patience and attention to detail, but with the right approach you can resolve issues quickly and efficiently. Start by checking the basics, then review the transaction response codes and messages and API logs. And test the API in a sandbox environment. With these steps and best practices, you can troubleshoot the Authorized Net SOAP API like a pro.